a young Jewish teacher is sitting with 12 ordinary young men that he's chosen to be with him for about 3 years, to learn from him, and then to carry on a movement that he is teaching people that God is involved in. And although he's just chatting at this point in our story in Luke to just these 12 men, there's a crowd of people listening to him. And that crowd include all sorts of people. People who've come to find an answer to their problems, mainly that they want some sort of healing because they've heard that he can heal people. Others that are interested or curious because he's got a reputation for saying interesting things. He's been taking ideas that they thought about their own faith, the Jewish faith, or about the Roman and the Greek culture around them, and he's turned them upside down. He announced that what he was all about was good news for the poor and a challenge for the rich. And that attracted the crowds. And then, as he's talking to these 12 young men with everybody else listening, he gives some commands, ways to live. And the first thing he starts to talk about is love, but it's a strange and a shocking, at the time, kind of love, because he says, love your enemies. So often people look at Christianity or stuff to do with the Bible, stuff to do with Jesus of Nazareth, and try and tell me that it's really complicated. But it's fairly clear, I think, what Jesus was saying here, because he says, love, do good, pray for, and bless. Give without expecting things back. Is that really complicated, or just do we want it to be complicated so we don't have to do it? As well as being really short and clear like that, Jesus, like any Jewish teacher, enjoyed using images, words, word pictures. And often they would actually be funny, they'd be ridiculous on purpose to make people think and wrestle with ideas that maybe couldn't be captured in just a few short words. The first image he then goes on to tell these young men is about guides leading others, and the guides are blind. Now remember, Jesus has chosen these men to follow him and learn from him. And among the crowd are people who are listening because they want to actually undermine what Jesus is teaching. They don't like what he's saying. It doesn't go along with the kind of way they want to teach. One of those groups is a group known as the Pharisees. And it's probably them that he's talking to here, saying that there are other folk out there who want to guide you and lead you, but if they don't know who God is and what God is doing, then they can't lead you because they can't see. I can't tell you actually what these word pictures mean because that's not what they were designed for. If there was a way to explain in words exactly what they mean, Jesus would have used those. Instead, he wants us to wrestle with them. I think he means here, be careful who your role model is, who you choose to follow. Do they have real wisdom, real experience? Are they understanding the realities of life and what it means to be human, or are they blind? Are they distracted, maybe focused on the wrong thing? And certainly the Pharisees had a reputation of focusing and obsessing on tiny little rules and following the rules and behaving instead of missing the simple things like love, pray for, do good, bless, give without expecting in return. Jesus then moves on quickly to another picture, and this one's one of his most famous. Maybe not a surprise picture from the son of a builder. He says, imagine trying to take a speck of sawdust out of someone else's eye when you have a whole plank of wood in your own eye. I don't think I need, or anyone needs to tell you what Jesus is trying to say here. That's the beauty of this kind of teaching. He goes on to use a word, hypocrite. And hypocrite in the ancient Near East, in the culture he was operating in, actually was just a word used for actors in the theatre. Those who pretended to be somebody else. And he's taken this word and he's saying, look, there are people who say one thing, but actually do another thing. And again, he was probably thinking of groups like the Pharisees, who liked to point out where everybody else was doing things wrong and breaking the rules, but they were missing the point of what God had actually said about loving and praying for and blessing and doing good. Their God had rescued them from slavery in their own stories to be a people who had a task, had a job, had a role, to be a blessing, to be a light. They weren't just saved because they behaved. It's interesting that when Jesus gives these initial sort of commands, this way, love all, do good to all, pray for all, bless all, share with all, there aren't any negatives in there. There aren't any do nots, except one. At this point, the only do not, he says, is do not judge each other. And by that he means don't criticize each other. Well, that's not quite true. He leaves room for criticism. Because he says there is one situation where you can go ahead, criticize each other. And that's when you've taken all the planks out of your own eyes. If you're sure about that, then go ahead. Tell other people how to solve their problems. But only then. Anyone listening here confident that they've taken all the planks out of their own eyes? I didn't think so. For all of us who still have planks in our eyes, these commands are simple. Don't criticize. Love. Pray for. Bless. Do good. Give without expecting in return. And then Jesus uses another image in the middle of all these images, and this one is more about the motivation. He gives a picture of a tree bearing fruit, and then gives examples of different kinds of fruit. And this tree is bearing the fruit it was meant to produce. There's no point in trying to sellotape a bunch of grapes onto a thorn bush to try and make it look good. That's not what it was made for. Each different tree and plant, as we're learning, is made to produce a different kind of fruit. And we're learning, perhaps far too slowly as humanity, that this creation project that we're all part of needs every single one to work together, all these different ones. The point of our human life, I believe, Jesus is teaching, is baked into our bones. It's been there right from the start of God's story with his people in the Jewish story of creation, all those songs and poems about at the heart of who God is and what this creation project is all about, that we're made for a reason, to bear fruit and to help those around us and everything around us to bear fruit. We are made to be who we were made to be, not who somebody else tries to sell us. These pictures are the foundations of the kind of things that Jesus talks about, to learn who God is, what God is about, who we as human beings are, what we were made for, including to bear fruit and to help those around us to bear fruit. No one lives that out. No one is less a hypocrite in any of the experiences of history than Jesus of Nazareth, who reveals in his words and in his actions who God is and the way of living out this movement that we get to be part of, knowing that this foundation, and only this foundation, will stop us being washed away by the floods of opposition, by the floods of temptations, the fake voices, the empty promises that are only interested in stopping this wonderful, this beautiful project. And so Jesus gives us sawdust, trees, and foundations. What do they spark in you?